Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the Homedics Drift. This is a Kinetic sand art machine slash coffee table that might just be the coolest lighting ambience gadget that we have ever checked out. So underneath the glass, there is a tiny little marble which is attracted to motors and a magnet which is spinning underneath that can be programmed to many types of animations via their companion app, connecting to the machine here via Bluetooth. It was actually inspired by the Japanese Zen gardens where you have to comb sand with a brush, and it supposedly makes you feel more calm, more mindful. The problem is, if you're like me, you'll know how hard it is to get pleasing looking designs in the sand if you're drawing it by hand yourself. So this of course gets rid of that frustration and does it for you by forming this machine that is constantly spinning and moving, and whenever you glance down to look at it, it's always painting a new type of landscape. I do have to point out that it's not the first time that this concept has been introduced. They even have larger variants in terms of diameter that can become even more awe-inspiring in terms of the animations and drawings it's able to produce. Here's kind of a shot of the motor spinning underneath, which, by the way, as you can hear, it's very quiet even on this smaller Homedics variant. The problem is the originals are just super expensive. Some of them can retail for thousands of dollars and can be considered as more of a luxury furniture piece. So this Homedics Drift variant here doesn't have a leg that stands upright, but you can put it onto any table and you can still set things like, of course, cups, coffee cups, as well as magazines over it. It comes in two size variants, either 21 inches or 16 inches, a small or large. This is the 16-inch variant that we have in front of us. Currently sells for around $300. You can find it in many retailers, including Amazon, as well as even Costco, Best Buy, but be on the lookout for discounts where it can sometimes dip lower than that. Personally, I think around the $250 price point makes it a lot more attractive and can be worth considering also as a gift idea for someone that maybe seemingly has it all. This is a much more unconventional gadget. The larger 21-inch variant, though, is going to be more expensive, selling upwards of $300 to $400, but if you have a larger space that you want to fill, then that could be worth considering. These machines also come in two colors, black or white. There are even cheaper variants on the market as well that further reduces the size of the table down to something like 8 inches and gets rid of the LED lights as well as the glass on top, but can be found for as low as $160. But I'd argue that the Homedics Drift strikes the best balance in terms of value, and I think the presence of the LED lights definitely adds a touch of more mystery and ambiance to the setup. A closer look at the kind of design here, it is very simple. We have just a piece of pretty durable glass on the top. Underneath here we have just a ring of LEDs, which are RGB. They can be programmed in terms of brightness, colors, and animations, and then of course we have just that sand underneath and a small marble. The setup process is extremely simple. So in the box, when you first get it, you have to just take off the lid here on the top, and then down below here you just pour in the sand which is included. It comes in a pouch like this, and there are even replacements that you can find online if for some reason you're moving out and you want to just dump out the sand and start from scratch. There's also a little comb, which you also find in more conventional sand art or Zen art gardens, and you have to simply just use this to calmly kind of even out the sand. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just make sure that it doesn't have too many obvious bumps and you're good to go. The power adapter cord also contains a few replacement or adjustable adapters for various countries as well in case you are traveling, which is good, and also just a quick user guide. Overall, the AC adapter cable can also be detached from the base, so if someone trips over it, it's not going to knock the entire thing down, which is good. That cable can be replaced if ever it breaks. It has about a 2-meter long length. Obviously, you can also find extension cords yourself, but I find it to be sufficient if you're plugging it into the wall and then popping it on top of a table. It doesn't become too short either. The frame of the base here is otherwise constructed as a polycarbonate plastic, but doesn't feel cheap at all. And at the very bottom here, along with the detachable power plug, you'll also find two keys. This will allow you to manually turn the table on and off from a cold boot, as well as turn the lights on and off as well. So it's quite simple, and you're able to see if you are connected to the Homedics Drift. You can also tap on the corner here to turn everything on or off, and it will pause the animation as well as the lights. You can also tap on it to resume. It will remember its place as well. You get a pretty fancy animation here that tells you the percentage that it's completed, and it will reach all the way around once it's finished the animation that it's on. Right now it's just drawing a simple circle pattern pattern across the entire sand, and it gets, again, surprisingly detailed lines that doesn't seem possible by something which is as large as this marble, but it has that much granularity in terms of movement. You can even change the speed of the movements as well, which still isn't going to be the quickest thing in the world because the marble is literally going around in circles, drawing everything. It's kind of like a 3D printer where it may take upwards of, say, 30 minutes to even 45 minutes to finish a more complicated pattern. Although I'd argue it's not really a con, because as more of an ambient piece of furniture, it's something that you want to glance over and see it working on rather than just being done in an instant and then moving on. Otherwise, you can change the brightness of the LED lights. As aforementioned, this is the minimum brightness. You can turn it completely off or go into the brightest mode that you saw there earlier, and can act as kind of a night light that glows there as well. You can even tap on the dial here to change the colors. The white color temperature can also be made warmer or colder. You can have it breathing to make it dimmer and brighter, as you can see there, or consistently at the same level of brightness, as well as a timer for changing the color every X seconds. The light, again, just makes the entire thing a lot more dramatic and highlights the details and contrast even more. Now, otherwise, down below here, you can also go into the playlist. In this example, it provides 17 different animations, some of which you saw in the beginning time lapse that it was able to complete over a span of, say, 12 hours or so, and continue to cycle back and forth. Also note that once you download a particular playlist, it will be saved and then synced over to the memory built onto the Homedics Drift. So there is a little bit of built-in storage, surprisingly, which means that if your phone ever disconnects from Bluetooth or you turn off the phone, the marble here can continue to spin until it completes the artwork. So it doesn't have to be tethered 24/7 to your device necessarily until you have to adjust some of the modes and properties, which is pretty convenient. A few extra examples can be found here. This one called Ocean Waves is more inspired maybe by water, some pretty intricate patterns that you're able to find here. Some of the playlists will be a little longer, some of them shorter. So maybe one thing that they could consider improving on in a future UI update would be giving a estimated duration of how long the entire playlist will run for, since right now that isn't really shown. Additional selections here, such as for Father's Day or Mother's Day, some other ones for fall, as well as different seasons can also be found. Now, if you're not looking for a created playlist, you can also further look at separate patterns in which the machine will stop after it finishes or completes a pattern like you see here. So you can download individual ones, favorite them, as well as create your own playlist as well, and that will then show up in the top tab over here. Just to serve as an example, here is one of the other animations. You can just tap on download to table, and then within just a minute or two, it will push it over to memory. It is a pretty fast process, and then you can begin. You can also set up a schedule as well to enable it to run under certain days of the week and also at certain times as well, kind of similar to a smart robot vacuum cleaner. And last but not least, you can also find any software updates over here as well, firmware updates, which will occasionally improve the stability. Now, in the early days, there were murmurs that the iOS app tended to be a little bit more responsive than the Android app, where sometimes, depending on your phone, certain folks reported that they had to connect a few times before getting it paired. But in the current firmware update, at least when I tried it with certain Samsung, OnePlus devices, I didn't face any difficulties. So I felt like it was pretty responsive and easy to set up and use. Whenever you turn the unit on and off from a cold state, it will reinitiate in terms of adjusting the motors underneath and aligning with the marble. So in case it does move around, if you are in transit or shaking it, it will reposition itself into the correct spot. So it doesn't require any manual calibration. Now, yes, at the end of the day, I do think this is a little bit more of a novelty gadget. More than anything, it's not a necessity, but I have to admit it is undeniably super cool. And again, you can still use it as a form of a mini table if you want to, set some objects on top of it. Since there is that glass, it doesn't really interrupt what is underneath. Not too loud either, so it doesn't become distracting if you have it in an office either, for instance. If anything, like we talked about, I just hope that Homedics can further create additional patterns over time, or maybe even allow users to create their own pattern and drawings, almost like some of those pixel art devices that we've seen in the past. But nonetheless, this is already a very interesting, again, quirky gadget that provides a more low-cost alternative to the original variant. So if you're interested, you can check out additional details in the links down below. Overall, I think it works surprisingly quite well. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the incredibly beautiful and peaceful Homedics Drift Kinetic Sand art table.